Work while you whistle. Do you listen to music to help you concentrate? Does it make mundane tasks seem less mundane? There have been many discussions about whether or not music boosts your productivity. We're about to have one of them. You're listening to Music Student 101. Here are your hosts, Jeremy Burns and Matthew Scott Phillips.
All right, welcome back, everybody.
Welcome back, one and all.
How you been, Matt?
I am doing it. We are into the semester now.
Yeah.
Things are rolling.
You and I have shared two unique experiences since the last episode.
Yes, we have. On opposite ends of the pleasure spectrum.
Me and Matt and our drummer friend Brian Malloy and our guitar friend Eitan Friedman.
Yes.
Went to go see a great show in Huntsville.
We did. It was awesome. Enjoyed it.
It was true rock and roll, and it was a good time. We stayed in an Airbnb.
Yep.
Got a little Uber out there, and
Yep.
grand time was had.
Great time was had by all.
Couple of weeks later.
Not even a weekend later for me.
No,
actually.
for Matt, yeah, it was pretty immediate actually.
Yeah.
We got a little text from Matt.
Yeah, got a little text from me. Just a public service announcement. I caught COVID.
Yeah.
Most likely at said concert, I think. That's really the only thing I did that weekend, so yeah.
And then everyone else seemed to do okay, and then a week later,
Jeremy caught COVID.
So
it took 3 years for the plague to get us, but it got us.
We are now among the infected.
We are now among the COVID survivors.
Yeah.
I mean, I really didn't get hit that hard, you know. I mean, I stayed isolated. I did what I was supposed to, which was a real pain for me. I'm one of those people that, you know, if I want to sit in my basement for a week, I will do it. But if I feel like I'm supposed to, I get all antsy. And it's like, well, I want to go do stuff. And that was honestly the hardest part. But
well, the first thing I did was when I got my negative test result was just go to Walmart just to see people.
just to go be around other humans for a little while. Yeah.
Possibly reinfecting myself. But hey, man.
But we survived.
Here we are.
Yeah, I don't know if the podcast is going to come out any late or not. You know, Jeremy's work ethic has saved us once again, and we may be on time. But there was definitely since there for a little while. It's like the podcast might be late because I had COVID, and then you had COVID, and you know we're behind schedule. But
we should take a bow if this comes out by the month's end.
Yeah, absolutely.
My OCD will not allow for it to be released after in the new month. So anyways, what do you think about this bumper music? Did you recognize anything from that bumper music?
Oh, sure. Can I do it?
Sure.
Yeah, that was fun.
That was There you go.
Yeah, nice.
That was what I did was called "Work While You Whistle." It was a theme in there. I kind of basically
theme in variations.
Vanilla iced whistle while you work. I wanted to do it in retrograde initially, in the like Bach might have done, but I tried and it just wasn't quite. It wasn't quite doing it for me. So. Anyways, you know, the original melody was written back in 1937 by Frank Churchill for the Disney movie Snow White.
Which we've all probably seen.
Yeah, that was one of the OG princesses, Snow White.
Yeah.
Disney princesses. The song was sang by Adriana Caselotti, and she also did Snow White's voiceover. So, a little history on that.
Fascinating.
And then see if you can get elements of hi-ho in there, too. This is episode 115.
115 episodes.
We have about 5 more episodes left until our next listener compositions episode.
Oh, very exciting.
And we'd love to hear from some more of you composers between now and then. You got probably 3 or 4 months, maybe a little longer.
Yeah.
Monthly we're doing this, so...
Monthly we're doing this, so 5 episodes, about 5 months.
Mm-hmm. But what are we talking about today?
What are we talking about today? We're talking about music and productivity.
I worked a job not too long ago. There is a big Amazon fulfillment center here in Bessemer, kind of close to where we live here in Birmingham. And I worked a video shoot on that. And I was working with a producer who was telling me that Amazon's been experimenting playing music in the workplace.
Right.
And checking its, efficient, if it changes anything about the efficiency or productivity of the workers.
Well, I know I've really gotten to a point where I like to have music going if I'm going to have to be productive for a very long time. Obviously, when I'm composing, that can't happen. And there are some times when I'm grading, other things where I have to hear what's going on musically and what I'm grading or studying or something. But generally, I really like it. When I was doing my dissertation, I discovered a YouTube page of like Star Wars ambient music.
Oh, yeah.
So, and that thing ran the whole time because I tried to just listen to like normal radio stuff, and it was way too distracting.
Yeah, people.
Like I know
talking.
I know more about music than anybody cares about, and listening to anything too sophisticated is like, oh, that's he went to the minor third there. Did you hear that? So I totally forget what I'm doing. But so I had nice, relaxing ambient music, and it really did seem to help my mood. If nothing else, it really did seem to help make it just less onerous to have to stare at a computer and get stuff done. So,
well, you're not alone. But before we get into this episode, perhaps we should listen to our new review. We got ourselves a new review.
Let's do that. We have a new review. From Steve from Canada. Who gave us 5 stars on Apple Podcasts.
Yeah.
And Steve says, I've been listening to Music Student 101 episodes in order and have finally caught up and signed up on Patreon. Well, congratulations, first of all, for that.
And to us, too, for getting a new Patreon page.
And for us, too. Yeah. We do recommend you listen to them in order. I know it's an increasingly daunting task at 114, about to be 115 episodes, but we do recommend chronological. Steve continues, this is an excellent podcast that takes challenging concepts and explains them clearly and with lots of great examples. Jeremy and Matt have lots of practical experience to share and really reduce the intimidation factor. Well, that's what we're trying to do. I enjoy their banter. They make great use of the podcast format to give lots of examples as they go. That really helps reinforce the material and make it sink in immediately. Although my capacity to absorb is limited, so much of it comes right back up to the surface and vanishes into the ether. You're not alone, Steve. Not alone. Thanks again for an amazing podcast, guys. To all the other listeners out there, donate what you can on PayPal or Patreon. And we do have a Patreon site.
We do. Patreon /music student. Patreon.com/music student 101.
Yes.
And you can get up there and you can sign up for whatever donation you like. But for $1 a month, you can get in there and see all the cool extra episodes.
Yep.
For $3 a month, you can get a little coffee mug.
Yes.
Which I'll send to you.
Yes.
Especially if you stay on me about it. And then for $5 a month, you get the mug and also the site. But you also get a special episode in your name if you just let me know.
In which we answer a music question you have. Specifically, your specific question answered by us.
Exclusively for the Patreon patrons.
Exclusively for our Patreons.
And speaking of which, we have a new Patreon patron.
Excellent.
David Carr from Detroit, Michigan, we've actually thanked him before a long time ago because of a PayPal donation he gave us. And he's been with us from the very start. He started listening back in 2016.
Yeah, and we also have a PayPal thing on our website, don't we?
That's right. We have a donate page on the website, so you can do PayPal or Patreon or anything like that.
And that's musicstudent101.com?
Yes, click on the donate page.
Excellent.
So anyways, thanks again to David, and let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah, so David says, I've been playing piano for about 7 years now. I've always loved the piano as an instrument, but never got involved much with music as a kid, as my family was one that always considered themselves, quote, non-musical. If you've been listening as long as David has, you know my opinions on the idea of non-musical, and that's not really a thing. I came to regret that as an adult.
It could be a thing we put on ourselves.
It can be a thing we put on ourselves. We can sort of assume people are not music. People think of musicians as talented. You always hear that. You're so talented because you play an instrument. And I've always had this sneaking suspicion that it's more about discipline and passion than it is about having some unique coding in your brain that allows you to do this.
Yeah, but if you're a 4-year-old and some jerk teacher tells you,
you can't
got no
play.
rhythm,"
Yeah,
that's gonna stick with you.
that sticks with you forever. Yeah, you've got your hands are too little. You can't play a musical instrument. It's not, some BS like that.
Yeah.
Right?
Guess I won't do that.
Yeah, it's terrible. Anyway, David continues. I came to regret that as an adult and wanted to pick up an instrument and chose piano. I was finishing up school at the time and was able to go to my college music school practice area and use some of their digital keyboards during summer break. Fast forward 7 years, and I have taken lessons intermittently with a couple of different teachers and studied a little bit of classical music and jazz. I've always liked ambient music and film scores and loved the atmosphere that the piano could add. I never thought I'd get into classical or jazz, but my music world has certainly expanded over time, and I find myself interested in things that I never would have enjoyed in the past. One of the beauties of studying music. Mm-hmm. And, I agree with that. We probably don't talk about this enough, but, as you study music, your horizons will broaden.
Yeah.
Because you learn to appreciate different styles and appreciate good music for the quality of the music more.
Sure.
So there is sort of this side effect of studying music, it seems like, that you start getting into things that, maybe you wouldn't, just as a listener, you didn't pay much attention to.
Oh, yeah, this show's done that for me.
Oh, sure, yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, David. Great mail, and thank you for supporting us and being a patron.
Yes, thank you, David, and we really appreciate it.
We do.
And now, let's get into our listener mail, shall we?
Indeed.
We had a listener named Visa-Pekka Mertanen, a.k.a. Visa Oscar, who caught an error on the website.
Oh, okay.
I got an email from Visa. Visa is a doctoral student at the University of Arts in Helsinki.
Oh, very nice.
Jazz department. He wrote in saying something along the lines of, since this show feels like a quality product, I want to point out a typo.
We do try to be quality.
We try, thanks to good people like Visa who keep us in check. So, yes, sure enough, I checked it out. And sometimes, I guess, and we had another listener not too long ago point out something else on the website. So, by the end of the day, by it's time to release this, I'm always at the last minute working on the website. And sometimes I'm watching The Office or whatever.
Listening to music.
Maybe I should have been listening to Bach, or Mozart for that matter. We'll get into that. But I want to plug Visa's music because he sent me a link to his Spotify page, and actually Visa's music is very awesome and beautiful, and we hope to play it on the show at some point. But if you guys are out there and want to hear it, check out visaoscar.com. That's VISAOSCAR.com.
Excellent.
And you'll dig it. It's real jazzy, really. He's a very accomplished pianist.
Right.
Okay. Great. So, thanks again, everybody, for writing in.
Thank you.
Thank you for your donations and your support and your reviews. Thank you. Before we get into this, I should name a few sources.
Okay.
BBC.com, there was a great article called, Does Music Help Us Work Better?
Interesting question.
It depends. That's part of the article thing. But this is by Zaria Gorvet, and it's also worth mentioning that many insights in this article were provided by one Karen Landay, a professional violinist and grad student from the University of Alabama.
Woohoo!
Right here. And then there was another great article in businessnewsdaily.com. Wouldn't business people want to know if they can crank their productivity?
They generally do.
It's called Music and Its Effects on Productivity. And this is written by Sky Schooley, which I think is my new favorite name. Sky Schooley.
It's my next band name.
Way to be named, Sky. That's a band name. Yeah, I love it. But the target audience for this article is obviously business professionals and managers who want to, who are interested in music and its effects on productivity.
Yep.
So let's go ahead and get into our episode, Music and Productivity.
Let's do that.
Okay, so in a recent episode, Music and War,
right,
we discovered that music can be used in helpful ways, but also in not so helpful ways.
Sometimes, yeah.
We talked about how people have used rhythm to sync up their efforts, like working like sea shanties and hoisting
labor
sails.
Labor
songs.
Yeah.
You see those Oxford rowing teams or whatever, where there's like,
right.
There's this, I want to be the guy with the megaphone saying "stroke." stroke while everyone else rows. But that's the form of that.
Yep. And, songs like Rosie, right? Yeah.
Rosie, what's that?
Oh, it's an old labor song. There was a field recording of it. These laborers were chopping down trees and singing. Basically an old African American work song. And
yes, and they did the same thing. They did that on Chain Gangs, people crushing rocks. And,
yeah.
There's been plenty of times where people use rhythm or music to sync their efforts and
indeed
become a stronger force together.
Indeed, yep.
So, Matt, have you ever used music to aid your concentration or boost productivity?
Well, I mentioned before, when trying to be productive during my dissertation, there was a lot of ambient music playing all the time, just to sort of make it feel like I wasn't grinding away the hours so much, But I listen to music all the time, and so whenever I'm cleaning house or something like that, I've usually got earphones in and I'm listening to something.
Oh yeah.
I do also listen to a lot of podcasts, but it will just as often be music. I cannot drive anywhere without listening to music. My stereo in my car is on all the time.
Oh sure, yeah.
Yeah.
Can you just imagine driving in a car with absolutely nothing?
That would be strange.
I think some people who probably work in loud environments or maybe have kids that yell all day long at them, when they get to their car, that's their little quiet
They just
space.
want silence as possible.
Well, I mean, when I'm cleaning the house, doing dishes, driving somewhere, there is always music also.
Sure.
Loud music, mind you.
Yeah.
Loud enough that I can sing along to it.
Right.
When I sing, I'm taking in deep breaths and it's filling my lungs with oxygen. It's
Right,
giving
yep.
me strength and power to carry on. I used to work at the bagel factory in my youth.
Oh, I didn't know that.
All day long, we would just sit there making bagels and without our flour-caked radio blasting classic rock, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah, I used to wash cars for a car dealership, and we had the radio on the whole time.
Just playing the car wash over and over again.
Not
the car wash. Yeah.
No, but I did. But it was back in the '90s, so it was just the airwaves radio, no internet or anything, and they did play "Time Keeps on Slipping Into the Future" like way too much.
Yep.
I got a little sick of it.
Heard a lot of that one. Still love it, but not coming from a flour-caked AM like a radio.
Right.
But back to getting, like you were saying, you're doing your dissertation. Well, when I was doing my homework as a kid, forget about it. Music would completely distract me. I had my bass in my room with my 18-inch cab, which there's no reason for a 16-year-old to have an 18-inch bass cab. But
sure
I did.
There is.
But I did, and it rocked the whole house and shook the windows. And but that would distract me from my homework.
Yeah.
But listening to music is what we're really talking about here anyways.
Right.
So yeah, that's been my experience. Now, so does music help us work better? Is one of the questions that comes up here.
Yeah, that's an interesting question.
It was by June of 1940 that roughly 10,000 British soldiers had been captured in Normandy by the German invasion thereof. So the British government involved the BBC, the British Broadcasting Corporation, towards the effort that was the Music While You Work program.
Interesting.
Twice daily, they would play upbeat music on their live radio broadcasts and factories, and among these were munition factories.
Right.
So they would play these on the loudspeakers to their workforce.
Mm-hmm.
Obviously, they needed more production, more weapons, more ammunition, and stuff like that.
Mm-hmm.
So there was a morning broadcast at 10:30 a.m., and there was an afternoon broadcast at 3 p.m. The music was upbeat, even-tempoed, and not a lot of jazz.
Oh, why not a lot of jazz? What was the thing with jazz?
I got my own opinions about that.
Okay.
For one thing, jazz is pretty complex.
Yeah, I suppose. Depending on what type of jazz you're talking about, but...
Well, yeah. I mean, I consider it to be a cerebral listening experience, but a lot of people just hear it in the background and they're just like,
Yeah.
But I'm not quite sure why it wasn't a part of the program. You know what I mean?
Yeah, maybe it was more of a cultural thing.
Could have been.
Yeah.
The opening and closing theme was called Calling All Workers by Eric Coates. And he was born in 1886, died 1957, 17 years after he composed this piece. And it was just kind of what people would hear before their radio broadcast came on and they could listen to music while they work. And some of these factories reported a 12 to 15% increase in their outputs in the hour following these broadcasts.
Fascinating.
So I thought that was an interesting effort. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Just the idea of bringing music into the workplace.
Right, yeah.
And in 2019, moving ahead,
A little.
just a little bit, there was a survey of about 2,000 Britons that revealed that half of those people listen to music while they work.
Mm-hmm.
And of that 1,000, only 2/5 believe that it helps them get more work done. So first of all, they believed it helped them get more work done. What does that even mean? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Second of all, why did those other 600 people keep listening while they worked despite believing it didn't help them?
I suppose they thought it elevated their mood. So it's not about getting more work done. It's about being a little more sane while you're doing said work.
The power of music.
Yeah.
Indeed.
So there are two main concepts that we're kind of working with here of music being beneficial to productivity.
Okay.
So the first idea is that music somehow makes you quote unquote smarter, right? And we've probably, a lot of us have probably heard of the old studies of, playing Mozart for babies and things like that, and seeing if it ups their IQ at all. Most of those theories have been largely debunked, I think. And then there's the idea that is far more generally accepted, I think, which is elevating the mood enough to make mundane tasks more tolerable. And this is a cultural phenomenon, regardless of whatever scientific studies has happened. This is something that almost every culture in the world has had some kind of music designed to do this, designed to make onerous tasks easier to get through psychologically, right? So there's a lot of anecdotal evidence to the idea of music elevating your mood during mundane tasks.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we're going to tackle both of those concepts, both of those ideas. And we can start with the first one, which is the idea that music somehow makes you smarter.
Makes you somehow smarter, yeah.
And on episode 62, Children and Music, we kind of talked a little bit about the Mozart effect, which is also discussed in some of these articles here. Back in the 90s, it was all the rave.
Sure.
And you remember that, don't you, Matt?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
The idea being that if you play Mozart's music for your kids, they'll just be a little smarter. You know what I mean?
Feel any smarter?
As a matter of fact, I do.
Okay, good.
Listeners, do y'all feel...
Then it worked.
Write in and tell us if y'all felt smarter. We could do a live study here.
Yeah, no kidding.
Anyways, like we said, people, kind of debunked some of that a little bit, and we'll get into that later on.
Yeah.
Back in 2015, there was a study with mice and humans.
Right.
So Mozart's K448 increased the alpha band waves in the subject's brains. I went back and listened to it while I was working on this episode, even though I said I don't listen to music.
Well, did it make you feel smarter?
And maybe. I did get the episode done, but I didn't recognize it. I didn't recognize it.
Interesting.
So again, exposure to this increased the alpha band waves in the subject's brain, and those are the parts that are associated with memory, cognition, and problem solving.
So what are you thinking when you hear that? It is a question that pops into my mind. So while you're listening to it, what's going through your head?
I mean, it's just pretty busy, It's like it sounds like fast work progress.
Yeah.
What about you?
What am I thinking when I listen to that?
Yeah.
Well, I know way too much about this stuff. So, I definitely heard a circle of fifths chord progression leading to a perfect authentic cadence. Yeah. It sounded like a bunch of major chord arpeggios in the beginning. And so I'm kind of thinking that. And I'm kind of like sort of just following the path of the chord progressions in my head largely. I may be atypical in that regard.
I was going to say, I wonder how many college professors were a part of this experiment.
How many music theorists? Probably not. Probably not many. They'd skew the results. But
well, here's the thing. They compared this to Beethoven's Furlies,
which we talked about recently.
All you got to do is go back and listen to that last little thing. Remember that? That's the one.
Yeah, I remember this now. Yeah, that one.
So there was shown no increase in the alpha waves of the same exposure to this piece compared to K448.
Well, okay, but you're talking about Mozart and Beethoven. You know, there's in the giant world of music, these two aren't that far apart, right? They're both using the same basic system of tonal harmony, the same basic laws of counterpoint that are creating these chord progressions. You know, I mean, they're two different songs in the same genre. One could argue.
And yes, for some reason, the mice who listened to the K448 did better in complex maze navigation, and compared to those who had the same amount of exposure to Fur-Elise. So this is spatial reasoning, spatial and temporal reasoning.
Yeah.
This was 10 hours a day for 10 weeks, by the way. This is how much these
That's
mice,
a lot.
So first of all, I hope you like Mozart and Beethoven.
Yeah, first of all, poor mice.
And there's Beethoven stuff I like more than Mozart stuff, and there's Mozart stuff that I like more than Beethoven stuff.
Well, sure. I mean, the human brain is a complex thing.
So maybe this was a bad selection. You know what I mean?
Well, there's not that much difference between the two in terms of how they're constructed. I mean, if you want to dive into classical music, right, there's a ton of differences between, an arpeggiated introduction leading into a circle of fifths progression versus, what is essentially a small rondo in Fur-Elise. But I mean, if you comparing Mozart and Beethoven, it's a lot like comparing Mozart and an mbira player, or comparing Mozart to a Chinese baguan ensemble. So there's.
Well, let's talk about these two pieces then. What are some other differences? I mean, for one thing, the Mozart piece was in a major key.
Was in a major key.
It was about as busy as a kicked ant bed. To me, what did it sound like?
Mozart wrote a lot of notes.
It sounded like a kicked ant bed, if you're asking me. Fur-Elise being in A minor, much slower tempo.
Yeah.
Very chill. You know what I mean? So
maybe Fur-Elise is easier to concentrate on?
The tempo of Fur-Elise does not make me want to chop wood or rivet things.
Right, yeah. It makes you want to wax maudlin, I suppose.
It makes me want to close my eyes and drift away, which I don't need to be doing if I'm driving to Atlanta.
Right.
I mean? So the idea, the long story short, the listening to classical music can temporarily enhance your spatial and temporal reasoning.
According to this study.
According to this study, for about 15 minutes. So
about 15 minutes.
So yes, it does make you
that tracks, doesn't it?
A little bit smarter for about 15 minutes. After your listening session.
I don't know if it's making you smarter so much as just getting your neurons firing.
Firing the neurons, yes. So maybe not making you smarter.
Okay.
It's smart is a very abstract concept.
A very abstract concept. It really is. It really is.
Now, regarding the second concept, which is with the dopamine factor, or what we were talking about, we have an example known as activation theory.
Okay.
The idea is that with mundane and repetitive tasks, some might struggle to keep a consistent performance level. I call it zoning out.
Right.
I can zone out. We know that music can increase dopamine levels.
Yes.
Right? Yep. Dopamine stimulates the prefrontal cortex, which is a part of the brain that controls planning, organizing, inhibition, control, and attention.
Right.
So perhaps it can make other things feel more enjoyable, but it also can affect your productivity.
Right.
It just needs to be music that you like, I think, is one of the key things here.
Music that you like, which is in itself a big concept, right?
Yeah. It might be that listening to death metal all day long, not that I don't like death metal, but I can see that being one of the more distracting. I might even find myself angry at the end of the day.
You never know. And then there's that too, and
there's how it has a mood altering effect.
Yeah, does it alter your mood? Do you feel angry when you listen to death metal and peaceful when you hear Fur-Elise?
Music has made me laugh. Music has made me cry.
Yeah. Even
music with no words. You remember our composer David J. David Black?
Oh yeah.
A lot of his music made me laugh. No words whatsoever, just funny, goofy things happening.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Yeah, the only other thing I would say about that is if you ever tried, like in the argument that music makes everything a little better, just sitting there eating with somebody with no music or any kind of background noise, just you chewing and swallowing and gulping and slurping. Music makes that better. Gotta have something in the backdrop. So, Matt,
Yes, sir.
what does the science say?
Well, there haven't been any terribly recent studies on this, but there have been some earlier studies. There was one in the Journal of Applied Psychology in 1966, in which they played music for employees at a skateboard factory. So these are 18 to 23-year-olds for a 5-week period. Main genres they used: folk, pop, show tunes, and dance music. And then there was a control group, I guess, with no music. Right. While the employees all agreed that music was a good thing and felt like they accomplished more under its influence, there wasn't any real sign in the numbers of increased efficiency or productivity.
So while the workers felt like they were being more productive, the numbers at the factory showed the same output.
Didn't add up. Now, this is just one study.
This is one study.
And you can ask all sorts of questions like, well, how are you measuring productivity?
Yeah.
By the number of skateboards you created, maybe. I don't know.
Or packed or, assembled or whatever.
Yeah. And, did you look at to see how many of those people quit after a month versus how many people were able to keep working at the skateboard factory? There's lots of ways. There's data and there's the interpretation of it, right?
And in a 5-week period, I have to wonder if, since there was 4 genres of music, maybe they did 1 week for each genre and then 1 week
with no music. Yeah, so that's not a lot.
So I'm not even sure if that's how they did that, but that's my speculation.
Yeah.
So you're saying that, in that case, it didn't really prove much.
Didn't really prove anything.
Except for the employees thought that. Now, there's something to be said about crew morale or employee morale.
You would think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's another one?
So Applied Ergonomics releases a study in 1972 in which it is found that background music increased efficiency on repetitive tasks by, and you ready for this number? A whopping 7.4%. Yeah.
It's not as significant, but it's
to people who concentrate on things like worker productivity, that's huge.
Actually, you're right. Yeah. It's a whole 7 points.
Yeah. I mean that is a what do scientists call it? A impactful shoot. I need to listen to music because my brain is clearly not.
Did y'all know we're not scientists?
Yeah.
We're bass players. Did y'all know we were bass players?
A significant result. A result of significance.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Sounds significant.
Yeah. So. But so there was that. And then in 2016, Total Jobs did a survey with about 4,500 respondents. So that's a lot of people.
Yeah.
It's just a survey, but it's surveyed a lot of people. 79% claimed that listening to music made them more productive.
Okay.
48% claimed that music helped them focus better. 24% said it helped to drown out other external stimulus like background noise or conversation. And 7% said that music helped to drown out internal stimulus such as irrelevant thoughts.
Okay.
Music is one big, huge, irrelevant thought. But...
But it's more in the backdrop compared to, oh man, did I leave the oven on?
Right.
That's not irrelevant, actually. That's kind of important.
That's kind of important if you left to you anyway. Now, whether your boss cares or not, is.
But what they call the monkey mind, I certainly have what is called the monkey mind.
The old, that's an old Buddhist analogy, metaphor there with the monkey, the mind that's constantly jumping and active and bouncing from one thought to another and quieting that as a part of meditation.
When I get in my car, if I'm bummed about something or something's bothering me and I start singing along to a song, I just forget all about that and focus on the performance at hand. You know what I mean? To myself.
So the idea goes, yeah.
Yeah. And then there's one more, huh?
2017, the Journal of Applied Research in Memory and Cognition released a study that concluded that college students underperformed on certain cognitive tasks while listening to music. Well, the college students listening to music are probably also doing other recreational activities. I don't know. I don't know that for a fact.
We can speculate.
We can speculate. This is different than productivity. It is underperforming on certain cognitive tasks. Which ones?
Well, what would be a cognitive task? I think if you're doing your homework and you're trying to do math problems or something like that, or word problems, I would consider that a cognitive task.
Yeah, is that what they studied though? Well, or was it?
These are college students. you know.
Yeah. So I mean, what cognitive tasks are they giving them in this study to concentrate on?
That's a good question.
Seems like an important.
I thought all of college was one big cognitive task.
Yes.
But so these are studies stretching from the 1960s to almost current day, 2017. There hasn't been a lot of, like you say, a lot of studies in more recent times or in the 2020s.
Yeah, these kind of psychoanalytic studies were really popular in the 70s and 80s, 60s, 70s, and 80s, actually. Mm-hmm. And they've kind of, the psychopath test comes from like the early 80s, right? It's like you can give people this questionnaire that'll tell you whether you're a psychopath or not,
Oh.
This was kind of a phase in psychology, it seems like. And I don't know how much of this stuff actually still goes on.
Oh, man. Well, let's talk about music that increases productivity.
Let's do that.
Now, some scientists believe that it is up to the individual's taste,
I would probably hypothesize that.
and that supports the whole dopamine thing.
Right.
If you're listening to music you like, you're getting dopamine.
Yeah, and what is the music you like? That you can really go down a rabbit hole in how you determine what you like and things like that. The Leviton book, This Is Your Brain on Music, actually addresses that a little bit.
Mm-hmm. Great book, man.
Great book, yeah.
Daniel Levitin.
Yeah.
This Amazon place that I was talking about earlier, this Amazon fulfillment center, they had a thing where the employees, they got like this big whiteboard, and the employees just put up their favorite songs. So they form a playlist. So it's a democratic process.
Right.
And I imagine that helps a lot.
Yep.
Because you're going to have one person over here who does not want to hear that crazy crap.
Yeah.
And you're going to have this other person over here who doesn't want to hear their crazy crap.
So they're trying to eliminate the genre as a factor in the results, right?
Or they're just trying to amalgamate as many genres as they can based on their workers listening requests.
Knowing the scientific method like I do, I would imagine that what they're trying to do is say, okay, well, if we just played one single drama, then that might skew the results, or one single genre rather, that might skew the results because people, some people wouldn't like that genre and some people really would.
Oh, exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
And they're trying to just study the effect of music in general, so they're trying to randomize so that that's not a control factor.
Sure. Makes sense to me. Mm-hmm. Now, and like on this note, some would suggest creating a playlist of songs you already know up and down, so you won't get distracted by the lyrics or the beat.
Okay. Yeah.
And that actually works for me. I got my top 200 plus playlists.
Yeah.
And that's my dishwashing music. That's my driving to land. I know all the words. I sing along.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It takes me a long time to know all the words to a song. Man. I'm talking 20 listens probably. What else? Okay, so there was a mental health expert named Will Tottle.
Okay.
Will Tottle.
Okay.
Who suggests that the two main types of music that are best towards this effect might be classical music and then nature soundscapes. So we talked about the classical music, right? Very stimulating. I think a big part of that is just that there's not as many words to distract the listener.
Perhaps.
That's my speculation. That's what he says as well. So that's not my speculation. That's his speculation.
It's his speculation.
And the other reason goes back to the dopamine discussion, right?
Right.
He also mentioned that some music that helps this kind of towards this effort is funk music. Which is funny because all funk music has words that I can think of.
Yeah.
And then video game music and movie music, which to me is pretty much the same thing these days.
Yeah. I don't know when he did that study, but yeah, today music/video game music it's
the same thing. It's the same production value practically.
More or less.
And you mentioned how you use Star Wars ambient music to help you study, right?
Sure, yeah.
But me personally, I'm not even sure if that would help me study, if that would distract me. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, it wasn't the Imperial Death March. It was like, it was like the Tatooine background music and stuff like that.
Yeah. Yeah, just real ambient.
Right, yeah.
So that's music that helps increase productivity, according to some scientists. And then music that decreases productivity, again, this goes back to the listener's preference.
Sure.
What kind of music would really mess with your concentration, Matt?
Anything syncopated.
Oh.
I think funk would actually really mess with my concentration because it would be very syncopated and very rhythmically complex, and I think that would distract my brain.
A lot of the funk bass lines are my favorite bass lines. I think I'd be locked into that bass line and trying to figure out what's going on.
I mean, I would have to try to be sure. I know classical music definitely distracts me, but because it's like it's like I kind of know too much about it. You know,
you're doing this all these analyses.
All these little mini analyses.
Yeah. Well, again, they recommend against music with lyrics, which can distract one's attention, like I said.
What about lyrics in a different language?
That's a good question, actually.
Yeah.
Because, like that earlier Matt played this Lacrimae?
Lacrimosa.
Lacrimosa.
It was in Latin.
In Latin. And, your version was MIDI.
Right.
So it had ahs and oohs for the most.
Yeah.
But it had, if there was someone singing it, I wouldn't know what they were saying, so I wouldn't probably be as engaged in the storyline, so to speak.
Right.
So I might could listen to your thing and actually study really ambient kind of organ.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe so.
It's a little depressing, but
yeah. I might drift off. I might start crying. Isn't that what that means in Latin?
I say, what's the point of studying? Yeah, lacrimosa is actually day of crying, I think.
Now, one factor that we touched on a little bit is tempo.
Yeah.
And this can go one or two ways. Tempos that are really fast can be a bit of a distraction.
Sure.
And some music with really slow tempos can create a drowsing effect on the listener.
Presumably.
Yeah.
Now, I don't know if that's actually been experimented on specifically. It occurs to me that music is such a complex thing.
And it's also to the ears of the beholder.
And it's such a subjective thing, yeah. So, it's like, well, this music makes you more productive, this music less. If you dare ask the question, well, what is it about that music? You've just opened up this huge can of worms, right? Well, is it the tempo that's making a difference? Or is it the key, like you said, major or minor key? Mm-hmm. Or some music isn't even in a key, right? Is it the presence of words or the lack of words? Or, there's so much sophisticated stuff going on in music. I think it's really hard really to say any definitive statements about what kind of music would do this or that, and have any sense of objectivity about it, know?
Yeah, what we're trying to do is come as close as we can, but we're not making any big definitive statements.
Oh,
here,
no,
right?
No.
But it's an interesting thing to talk about,
Yeah, absolutely. Oh, absolutely.
And the only thing I can confirm is my own experiences in this case. I can confirm that System of Down will get me to Atlanta and back okay. Daft Punk, things like that. But if I'm listening to Alison Krauss, or something more slow and chill and pretty, might want to get a Red Bull to go along with that.
Yeah. I can definitely say that Arvo Pärt is no good to drive to.
Yeah.
I've tried and it doesn't work.
Let's talk about what you said about the syncopations, because that might be a key factor of why jazz was not as much a part of the factory workers initiative.
Yeah, maybe so, because it was highly rhythmically complex. And even what you would call quote unquote simpler jazz, like New Orleans jazz or something, is still going to be fairly rhythmically syncopated, swing, swung beat, and
yeah.
So yeah.
But I'm going to also go with your culture idea.
Yeah,
because you imagine the factory workers back in Britain, and the World War II were Caucasian, a lot of Caucasian.
We're British and therefore white, and also, steeped in a British music culture versus an American music culture anyway. Mm-hmm. Jazz might have sounded, foreign to them to some extent. I don't know.
It might have scared them.
Yeah, while we're on this tangent, a lot of these studies, especially the ones, the sort of classical music makes you smarter studies, have really kind of, in my opinion and to my mind, been very, very dubious over the years, because they've been used a lot to sort of imply the innate superiority of European classical music, right?
Oh,
this music is high, sophisticated, elevated music, and they've kind of been used as almost as a type of soft propaganda to reinforce this idea that classical music is this high, sophisticated, intellectual, highbrow thing that's going to make you smarter and more productive and just a better, well-rounded human being. Where something is lowly and base is jazz. Is just going to turn you into some kind of barbarian, right? Right. Which of course is foolishness.
Yeah.
But European classical music isn't really particularly more sophisticated than anything else. It's just a sophistication that's easier for an education system based off European culture to propagate.
Sure.
Right. And study, quote unquote, and things like that. So, on that tangent, a lot of these things, whether the studies were done with an agenda or not, they were, the results have definitely been used sort of as this kind of soft propaganda. That was one of the big, the Mozart effect phase. That was one of the big sort of things that a lot of people got turned off by, was they felt like they were saying you should listen to Mozart and be smarter, not music in general.
And buy these tapes.
And buy these Mozart tapes, absolutely.
So it was that was kind of a big old sales kind of thing.
Right, yeah. And they're kind of playing off your preconceived assumption that Mozart is quote unquote smart music.
And that's funny because what you're talking about here, they mentioned in one of those articles, but I didn't quite know what they were saying, but now I do. What you're saying was that they talked about the superiority. A lot of this was kind of propaganda towards the superiority of the music from that region.
Yeah, ironic, because when Mozart was alive and composing, his music was not considered smart music. I mean, it was considered pop music, basically, right? It was considered light and frilly and entertaining, not deep and profound the way Haydn was.
Oh, wow.
Certainly not deep and profound the way Beethoven was. Are you kidding me?
Yeah.
Right? This was just simpler. And, when he got into his opera buffa kind of stuff, that was a lot of European nobility actually consider that just the lowest form of art.
Garbage rock.
Yeah. So it's ironic that now we consider it, quote unquote, smart music. I can go off on a real rant here if I'm not careful. But
It's probably ingrained in me, but when I hear British accents, I just assume there's a few more IQ points up in that because of the British accent.
I either assume that there's a few more IQ points or that they're some kind of secret evil villain who's got a secret underground base somewhere, right?
Hey, we love our UK buddies,
we love
by the
our
way.
British listeners.
We love the BBC.
We love you guys.
I use the BBC for the show.
Yeah, that was one of our sources. We love,
Y'all just sound smart and scary.
Yeah, and also scary.
Well, I mean, I don't have much else to say about this, man. I think it's been a fun little thing to explore.
Yeah, I do too. And, if I could have Matt's final thoughts here.
Please.
Music is sort of something that comes from the human brain and is therefore extraordinarily complex. The human mind is itself extraordinarily complex. Right? So the idea that you could measure music's effect on a human, even in its sense of its productivity or not, or its mood or not, is always going to be extraordinarily subjective.
There's so many variables.
Right, yeah. This isn't pharmacy here, right? Where this drug is going to have this chemical reaction. It's just more complicated than that. And there have been, good faith efforts to kind of dive into that complexity.
Yeah.
There's been less good faith efforts to sort of elevate one music as making you smarter over another. I don't think any one genre is going to make you smarter or more of a human, but I do think listening to music makes you more of a human.
Yeah.
Right? Now, whether that's something your boss wants or not has a lot to do with who your boss is, right? If working at the chicken plant, and just chopping heads off chicken all day, does your boss really want you to be more of a human?
Yeah.
But presumably you want to be more of one.
Presumably, yes.
Right? And is as big a fan as I am of active listening. Where, not music is background noise, but sitting in a space and turning on music and have that be the activity you're doing, sitting there and listening to music. Much as I am a fan of that. I think having music in our daily lives is one of and being able to have music pretty much anywhere we are is one of the great benefits to modern technology. One of the ways in which we are truly spoiled and truly better off than humans who have lived in the past.
Yeah.
Right? So I would take advantage of this. Now, whether you think it makes you more productive or not, it's pretty undeniable that it makes work more tolerable. Mm-hmm. I mean, there's a lot of evidence towards that, and whether it actually makes you more productive or not, it is going to make you like your life better.
Yeah,
and that's something that is valuable. Mm-hmm. Especially to any employer who wants you to stay around.
Yeah. And even if it doesn't change the performance numbers, they feel better.
Yeah. Well, like I said, with that one at the skateboard factory, well, did they take a survey of how many of them quit after a month versus how many of them stayed? Maybe they didn't make more skateboards while we're in a given day, but productivity can be measured in a lot of ways.
Sure. Yeah. Again, many variables.
Too many to really ever crack this mystery.
Well, it's kind of like the unified theory kind of thing. They'll never really know what happened right before the Big Bang, or
never really
all the way down. So it's a lot of speculation, but a lot of informed speculation.
Yeah, we should do an episode sometime on how does music change you as a person.
Oh yeah,
just how does music in general? What does that do to the person you are?
Well, we have a little time left, Matt. You want to get into that?
No. This is going to become the Matt Phillips Philosophy Podcast. It already has been.
I like it. Because, hey, the fact of the matter is, when I was a teenager, I was a teenager. I had more angst. But when I was listening to Nirvana and some of the grunge music that was coming out, I was kind of a pissy little dude.
Yeah,
and then I started listening to Pink Floyd and like kind of chill music. Beatles. Oh man, the Beatles really actually changed my
and
way of
yet
thinking.
another. So now this is the Matt Philosophy Podcast. You asked for it. Mm-hmm. So another question that is a big question in my mind that just sticks around all the time is right in that subject. Right. So you're kind of angsty, listening to what'd you say, Nirvana. Mm-hmm. And like Soundgarden and stuff.
Sure, but which came first, the chicken or the egg, right?
Exactly, right. So were you an angsty dude, because you listened to that? Did that music make you angsty? Or were you angsty and that's what gravitated you towards this music?
Yeah.
And, lest you think this is just some, abstract philosophical discussion we're having here, politicians have attempted to ban music. Yeah, in the past with the argument, and so do today, with the argument that it will make you violent, make you murderous.
That's right.
I mean, there are people who will make the argument that listening to gangster rap makes you want to be a gangster. Ergo, you will go be a gangster, and therefore we can't have gangsters. So we need to not allow children to listen to this music. Mm-hmm. People use this argument to talk about and to relegate the kind of art you have available to you. Yeah. So to me, it's worth discussing. Well, is that really what's happening? Right? Am I really going to be some kind of violent Satan worshiper if I'm listening to death metal? Right? Or do I have dark, violent feelings that I hear reflected in death metal, and so I gravitate, right? So what is really going on?
I've been listening to the band Ghost from Sweden for
both of us, we have. Yeah.
For me, about 4 or 5 years now. Oh, look out.
Yeah,
hey,
there you go.
Well, all that to say that I don't feel any satanic impulses.
No.
I still love everyone like I always did.
Yeah, of course, again, we're rapidly approaching old age, and we've kind of seen it and done it all at this point here, right? I mean, we're not teenagers, right? Somebody plays satanic music for us, they're like, yeah, we've
heard that before.
I've seen Ozzy Osbourne, man. This isn't new to me,
They tried to ban that back in the day.
They tried to ban it.
Yeah.
They absolutely did.
There's a great little documentary on that actual. Who was the woman that came out with all the stickers?
Are you talking about? It wasn't Tipper Gore,
yes.
was it?
Yeah, like Dee Snider. There was a big old lawsuit.
Dee Snider got mad.
Oh, he was a badass on that thing.
Yeah.
And then Judas Priest was there.
They tried
John Denver.
They tried to say Judas Priest had made some teenage girl commit suicide because of his music, and actually put him on the stand for like for like having a like like third degree murder or something,
Yeah.
and he had to sit there and say, no, it's just music.
Yeah.
Right?
If I was him, I would have been like, yeah, what kind of childhood did this girl have? What did you guys do?
Well, that's what his defense attorneys.
What kind of parents are you?
I mean, at the end of the day, you just can't conclusively prove that anybody committed suicide because they listened to Judas Priest, right? But
I would call that non-productive form of music. Anything
Yeah.
that caused someone to commit suicide.
yeah, right. So I mean, yeah, right. Very the ultimate unproductivity, right? but yeah. So this question kind of needs to be answered because I mean there are religious beliefs in the world that will limit what music you can listen to. Mm-hmm. Some of them claim you can listen to no music at all.
No music at all, yes.
Their argument being what it does to you psychologically and spiritually, and they can't have that, right? So this is an important question, and for my money, I don't really think music can change who you are. I think you gravitate towards music because it is speaking to something inside you, right? Mm-hmm. Whether you're listening to Red Hot Chili Peppers or Metallica or Beethoven, something in it is grabbing you,
yeah,
right? And that's what you get for. I don't think in my personal experience I can say any type of music made me into a different person. Mm-hmm. I think I was a person that was attracted to a lot of different kinds of music over the course of my life, right? So now you can make arguments against that, sure.
Yeah.
If you really, really wanted to. But I guess I kind of tend to lean towards, the chicken side of the chicken or the egg, right?
Yeah, sure.
The listener wanted something out of music, and when he found the music that was giving him that, they stuck with it.
It gave them dopamine, and they wanted more.
Right.
And they wanted it again.
Right.
That's what it does to me.
Yeah.
Certain kinds of music.
Certain kinds of music, yeah. And again, read Daniel Leviton's book, This Is Your Brain on Music, because he does address this to a certain extent, and it's a really fascinating book to read. One of the things he said that always stuck with me is that most people who are not musicians, they have decided on the 3 or 4 different kinds of music they like by the age of 22. Mm-hmm. So once you're past the age of 22, you have pretty much settled on the 3 or 4 different genres of music that you're going to listen to the rest of your life. Now, he gave musicians up till about 30.
Well, okay.
Right? And then past 30, you've more or less settled on the genres of music you're going to listen to for the rest of your life.
Okay, so this is interesting because the average age and when people's brains loses its, or the elasticity starts to
I think
fall
that was
away
his argument, actually.
is around 22 or so.
Yeah,
in
22
the
to 25.
20s.
I think that was a part of his argument, actually.
But then there are some studies that suggest that musicians, and the work that it takes to be a musician, the practice, it does keep the neurons firing.
Keep those neurons firing, and so you can make it a little longer. And I think people who, if you study music on the level I do, you're just you're just constantly looking for new input. So
you have a very stretched out brain.
It's all stretched out and flabby. It's lost all integrity at this point. It's sagging in the middle. It's sad.
Silly putty. We have silly putty for brains is what we have, y'all.
Exactly.
We hope you enjoy this.
We did, yeah. Thank you for listening to the Matt Philosophy Podcast.
Yes. To start a whole new show here.
Really?
Well, let's have a little conclusion or recap, so to speak.
Okay.
I mean, we've learned that tasks that are performed using the prefrontal cortex often benefit from music.
Exactly.
And these tasks are often associated with productivity.
Yeah.
Some repetitive tasks are improved with upbeat music.
Yep.
And, think about exercise, for example.
Yeah, sure.
My friend Colin used to teach a spin class. That's all they do in spin class. They listen to music and they cycle along.
That sounds very Colin.
To the beat. Yeah, he's a very healthy fellow.
Yeah.
Physically.
Anyway, physically at least.
You've heard the songs he's written. We had him on the show before. He's a crazy guy. He's crazy. That's why I love him. But also we learned that music can help boost productivity, but there's also other variables to keep in mind.
Absolutely.
Among these, is it music that you actually enjoy?
Which has got to be taken into consideration.
What is the nature of the task you are trying to accomplish?
which has to be taken into consideration.
Again, because if I'm doing homework, I'm not going to be listening to. Some people listen to music and do just fine. Some people do better homework when they listen to music.
Sure.
I remember. Yeah. And then another factor is the tempo.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep.
There's got to be like somewhere in there the perfect. It just depends on what you're doing.
Yeah.
The tempo, I think. And then another factor being, are there lyrics involved or other distracting elements?
Yeah.
Like you said, syncopations. Boy, Frank Zappa had some really fun stuff to listen to, but very complicated. I can't imagine.
I feel like at some point it will reach the level of complexity that you won't be able to follow it, and then you will, again, kind of tune it out.
Yeah, okay. That's probably.
Right? I mean.
I can see that. Because there's some music that I really am disappointed by the fact of how little I can grasp what's going on in there.
Yeah. There's a style of 20th century contemporary art music called surrealism that is so, Jeremy's chuckling over there. It's so infinitely complex that I think most listeners just kind of get bored trying to keep up with it.
Yeah.
You know, and it kind of becomes boring, even though, in its construction, it is probably the most complex style of music ever written.
A lot of people consider music to be an escape.
Sure.
I would call that music a chore.
It definitely was for me. I had to learn about it to get my degrees. So
yeah,
it was definitely work where I was concerned. I didn't enjoy it.
It's like music theory in action. Music theory to your ears.
It's music created around a music theory, which anyone who listens to this podcast knows very well is antithetical to my philosophy.
Indeed. Well, this has been fun.
It has.
Has it been productive?
Well, we have a podcast now. We have another episode for the
We got one in
podcast.
the can.
Yeah. I wonder if it helps you be productive. Did the new podcast help you be productive?
Did we
on our next episode?
Yeah,
No,
did we help you? Yeah, that'll be the next episode. Listener responses.
Yeah, all right. But thank you for being with us either way.
Do you feel smarter? Do you feel this has been a productive use of your time? If not, maybe put on some music you really like. But be sure to tune in next month for another informative episode of Music Student 101. If you'd like to help support us, be sure to visit the donate section of our website, musicstudent101.com. For merchandise, check out redbubble.com/musicstudent101. And for questions or comments, email us at info@musicstudent101.com.